guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, Neighbor Karen Let Her Son Steal My Classic Car. Ever since I was a little boy, I have loved cars. I remember my dad and grandpa would always take me to car shows, particularly to look at older cars. My grandpa was really the one that got me into old cars, and I think that those memories with my grandpa gave me such a passionate tie to old cars. I told my dad and grandpa that when I was old enough to get a job, I was going to save up and buy an old car to restore and fix it up. I had gotten my first job at 17 years old and started putting money away each paycheck. However, just a couple of years ago, I am now 24, my grandfather passed away and, in his will, he ended up giving me his 1967 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. I was so emotional when I inherited his car. I was just a 20-ish-year-old kid who was in college, still saving for my dream car, originally a 1972 Mustang. But now I had a beautiful car that was already restored and had been taken care of. At this point, I knew that I would use my saved-up money to continue maintaining my new beloved car. So, just last year I graduated college with my bachelor's, and was finally moving out and living on my own. I had lived with my parents, and then in the college dorms, so I was really excited to move into a rented condo and start my life. And of course, I had my Camaro by my side. Immediately upon moving in, the people next door took interest in my car. It was a beauty, and my grandfather did take really good care of it, so it was not unusual for people, especially car people, to stop and take a look at my car. As days and weeks passed, the mom would frequently stop and talk to me. At first, I thought that she was just being friendly. Heck, I was a naive kid who did not know any better and could not see the red flags. Away, it becomes clear that she wanted something from me. During the summer, her son's birthday was coming up. When she brought this up to me, she then asked me if I would ever be willing to sell my car. Of course, I could see where this was already going and told her that no, I would not be willing to sell my car because I inherited it from my grandpa, and it meant a lot to me. You know, not to be cheesy or anything, but it really did feel like this car was the last piece of my grandpa I had, and it was his baby as well, so I wanted to take care of it. My neighbor then scoffs a little and says something along the lines of how her son is a car lover and yada yada. I straight up told her, that's great, then he knows how hard it would be for me to sell it. After that, she did not have too much to say, so I thought I was done dealing with her for good. Turns out that was not the case. My condo had a garage. Most of the time, this is where I parked my car. Each unit had one assigned parking spot plus their garage, since it was just across from my unit. One night, my ring alarm for the garage goes off. It was 3 or 4 in the morning, and it actually woke me up because I have it set up to get notifications on my phone. I did review the footage and can see someone in a dark hoodie opening the door somehow, and trying to break into the car, but when the alarm goes off, they take off running. I have no idea who it was at the time, and I honestly did not even expect it to be my Karen neighbor and her son. I filed a police report because I was scared that people were after my car. And what do you know, a few days later, Karen the neighbor is actually caught trying to steal my car. I am just coming back home from getting groceries, and because I stocked up, I had to make a couple of trips. I left my car right in front of my unit. My condo was facing toward the street, with the door open because well, you know I was going to be right back to get the other groceries. Well, to my absolute surprise when I came back, my car was zooming down the street. I know this sounds crazy, but it still did not occur to me that someone could be stealing my car. I thought the car took off by itself. Again, I also might be naive. So, I go racing after my car, and guess who is in the ducking driver's seat? My neighbor's son. He saw it as an opportunity to try and steal it. However, he did not get far because he ended up going so fast that he lost control of the wheel and ended up crashing into a unit at the end of the street. In that moment, I can honestly say that I was heartbroken. I thought my grandpa's beautiful car was gone. I call 911, and so do several other of my neighbors, as well as the people's condo he hit, and he ended up getting arrested. He did try to leave the scene, but one of my neighbors is a badass and tackled him onto the ground while the police came. The mom, The one who was bothering me in the first place about selling it. Tried acting like she had no idea what was going on. Obviously, I knew she was full of shit, and it was funny because while the son was getting cuffed, he shouted at his mom, "You said I could do it. WTF?" Anyways, the son ended up getting charged for grand theft auto and ended up having to pay back the damage he had caused. I am not sure how much the people got for their property getting hit, but I got enough back to repair damages and whatnot to the car. I will admit, I was still pretty upset because there were a lot of original parts in the car that had to be replaced, but at least the crash was not bad enough to where it was completely totaled. I know that if my grandpa is watching, he knows it was not my fault either. As for the mom, I am not really sure what happened to her. But she moved out and nobody has really seen her since. She did try throwing her son under the bus, so maybe she ran, or she got charged with something. Either way, it never amazes me how entitled some people can get. The next story is titled, "Sell Me Your House." A couple of years ago my DH and I bought a house from the city council. We had seen it and we loved everything about it and the neighborhood. Inspection showed that apart from the central heating boiler, everything was in good order. We still needed to replace the central heater boiler. We also renovated the bathroom and stairs, and we placed a new kitchen. Between then and now we have invested money in our home. Amongst other things we placed solar panels, renovated the front and back garden and renovated our downstairs toilet. For reference, we have lived here for around 6 years now and we have no intention on moving. Apart from the fact that we pumped a lot of money in the house, we love the neighborhood, our neighbors and the fact that we are close to family and friends. The way the council sold houses went as follows. The house was up for sale for 6 weeks. If you were interested, you could schedule a visit with the real estate agent, place a bid if you wanted, and then after the 6th week the city council would look at all the bids and see who offered the most. 2 weeks ago I was home when a lady rang the doorbell. She introduced herself and told me that when the house came up for sale all those years ago she and her husband were interested. They could see the potential but their bid was rejected. She was enthused about how it looked now, from what she could see, and how beautiful the garden was, how wonderful the solar panels were and such. So I thanked her for her compliments and waited for the reason why she rang the doorbell. She told me that since they had more money saved, she and her husband wanted to know if we were interested in selling them the house. I told her that we were not interested. She started whining and gave an offer and I told her the same, not interested at all. More whining ensued and she made a new offer. I kindly drew the line and said that she can offer all she wants. We love living here and we want to enjoy our home with the family we've built in it. Then I told her that I had things to do, wished her a good day and closed the door. I had barely turned around when she started ringing the doorbell continuously. So I opened the door and asked her what she needed to say. She told me this, almost verbatim, "You need to sell us this house. You have lived here for some years now. My husband and children deserve a nice house like this. I gave you 2 offers that are very reasonable. It's our turn now, so sell us the house. We want to live here." I told this woman that her offers were laughable. She gave 2 offers while we knew that we could ask for double the price and get that still. She lowballed. I reiterated that we were not interested and would not sell the house. I asked her to leave and closed the door again. Like before, she started ringing the doorbell like a madwoman. After trying to ignore it, I ripped open the front door and shouted in her face for her to get lost. We are not interested. Even if we were, I would not sell my house to her since she's acting like a spoiled brat. I wouldn't want my neighbors to deal with her spoiled attitude. I told her that she doesn't need think about trying to bully us into moving and to get the duck away or I would call the police. This time I slammed the door to get the message across. She stayed, screaming at the door that we have to sell the house to her and walked around a bit before leaving. I did send a message in our streets group app about her. People have said to keep an eye out for her. My DH was stunned when I told him this, as this is not a normal thing in our country to do. She has been seen once or twice but has not caused problems for us or anyone else. The next story is entitled Neighbor Decides Communal Garden is Now Hers. And Ruins It. TL.DR, entitled Neighbor Ruins Communal Back Garden with Series of Improvements that she didn't have permission for. We're all pissed. Now, without going into too much detail, I live in Scotland and reside in what's called a tenement house. Imagine a block of flats but smaller and older. Very common here. Anyway, all the tenements on my street have a front and back garden, We own the front garden as it came with our flat, but the back garden is communal and is shared between all residents within our tenement. Now onto the entitlement. We have a neighbor who lives in the flat directly above us. We live on the ground floor. This will be important later. Now this neighbor, who we'll call En, has always been generally annoying and kinda insufferable. Always talking in a really slow tone as though you were inept. However, back in June, her BS ascended to a new level. En has always been into her gardening, which there's obviously nothing wrong with, but she started coming up with a plan to use the back garden for her gardening. Now, on paper this was also fine. All she had to do was get the permission of all other residents within our tenement, of which there were about 10. She didn't do that at all. In fact, the first we learned of her plan was her slipping a piece of paper through our door that outlined what she was going to do. Not wanted to do, going to do. The plan itself wasn't great, but it was by no means awful, so my mum let it slide. Fast forward 2 months when all of a sudden I come home, look out of my bedroom window, which overlooks the back garden, and see not the raised wooden beds and terracotta pots that had been proposed, but 15 plastic laundry baskets filled with soil, 12 empty milk bottles in place of colored enamel tins, and a massive fuck-off compost bin. Safe to tell me and my mum were pissed. My mum had a strong word with En about it, and En claimed she'd remove the milk bottles by the end of the week. I shit you not, the milk bottles weren't removed for nearly 3 months, all while serving no purpose as there wasn't anything in them. In the meantime, everything else she'd been trying to grow had died a rapid death, but she'd done nothing about it. During her milk bottle removal ordeal, En also dealt with one of the many soil-filled laundry baskets now complete with rotting vegetation. How did she deal with it? Did she remove it and dispose of the contents accordingly? Of course not. This is En we're dealing with here. Instead, she tipped the basket up and over, dumping all the soil and dead plants onto the already overgrown grass, took the basket back to her flat and just left all the soil as it were. How my mum hadn't snapped by this point I have no idea, but credit to her. Over the next 2 weeks, 2 raised wooden beds were finally put in, but the plants in them also quickly died and, as of writing this, are still yet to be dealt with. En also added this weird metal beam archway thing between 2 of the laundry baskets and failed, to twist one of the longer plants around said archway. It was hideous. However, a small, and I do mean small, dose of karma was just around the corner. If you're a UK resident, you will remember Storm Arwen hitting a week or so back, and as a result of this, En's treasured archway was blown over completely and, as you would fully expect from En by now, is still to be dealt with. So here we are in December with an essentially trashed back garden. Laundry baskets with dead plants in them, raised beds with vegetation so dead it had begun to turn yellow, a crooked archway, an actual mound of soil and overgrown grass everywhere. Also, since our flat is on the ground floor as I mentioned earlier, our home value has almost certainly been damaged by this, which is even more problematic as we intend to move within the next few years. I should also note that we're not the only ones who are royally fucked off with En's improvements, but nothing more has come of it as of now, though my mum says she'll be elevating it to a higher level if nothing changes by the time we do come to move. Anyway, there is my story of the most entitled person I've met thus far in my near 18 years of life. The last story is titled, While the Baby Sleeps. The baby was 6 weeks old. Newborns are incredibly hard work. She slept in 20-minute increments around the clock. I was utterly exhausted. My husband helped as much as he could, poor man, but he worked long hours on his little sleep. We had no family in the area and no money. We managed somehow, as new parents everywhere do. Sometimes I think the only reason the human race continues is because the kids are so cute. Mind you, the cuteness does wear kinda thin sometimes. Q wannabe chairwoman, a lady who was scheming to take over a large local social organization. I'm sure you all know the pattern. Pick or invent a problem. Present yourself as the solution to the problem. Jump up and down screaming that the problem will only go away if you're allowed to replace the current leader, and insist that anyone who disagrees is a villain of deepest dye. You'll see it all in the next elections. She has surrounded herself with a crowd of fawning yes folks who buy all this. They are anxious to stay in her good graces, hoping to rise in the organization if she succeeds in taking over. Maybe they are afraid of being a villain of deepest dye. She has grown used to them agreeing with her every word. My husband and I had some skills they valued. We were moderately active in the group, happy to help out if they asked nicely, but we remained militantly indifferent to its politics. We had many other interests and, oh yeah, a new baby. So I'm using my last remaining brain cell to fold laundry. The phone rings. Luckily the baby was already awake, or I might have blown a police whistle into the phone and hung up. It's wannabe chairwoman, just full of bounce and cheer. Hey, new mom, I'm giving a party for mutual acquaintance you barely know. I know you bake. I want you to make French bread for the party. 24 loaves should be enough. You can drop it off at time and place. I say blearily. You know I just had a baby. Oh, you can do it while the baby sleeps. Yes, dear Redditors, you are perfectly correct in your assumption. Wannabe chairwoman has never had any exposure to kids. Probably sprang from under a cabbage leaf, full grown and formally attired, and started bossing the farmer around. So, I sit for a moment, numbly adjusting to the fact that wannabe chairwoman is demanding I donate free ingredients and unpaid labor for a bash I'm not invited to, and would not care to attend if I were invited. All while the baby sleeps. She has no notion of the effort and cost involved in either baking or babies. She also has mistaken me for somebody who will take orders from her. Political maneuvers. If I bake for her party, she'll tell everybody we're on her side of her personal war. Danger, danger, Will Robinson. Disengage. Maintain armed neutrality. No. Sorry. Impossible. Gotta go. Baby crying. Click. No regrets whatsoever. Thank you for listening.